Hello everyone and welcome to JMakes 3D. Today's video is going to be about designing a lightsaber hilt. I found some inspiration pictures that I'm basing the hilt off from, and I've done some initial sketches to sort of map out what I want to do. I'm trying out a different technique for this one. A lot of the time when I design lightsabers, I'll do everything in place at the same time. For this one, I'm going to try to make each component in its own separate space and then bring them all together as actual components. So, without further ado, I'm going to get this started. So, let's see which is the first piece I'm going to make. So, a lot of these pieces, and I'm actually going to be using the component feature. So, we're going to call this top one. Not super descriptive, but it should help. All of these pieces are going to be based around an outside diameter of the lightsaber of 30 millimeters. I've found that works really well for creating lightsabers that don't feel like they will snap in half in your hand. So probably somewhere in here we're gonna have the lightsaber part that I'm designing up on screen. That way you can sort of see what I am basing the design on. And a lot of the stuff is sort of mapped out as part of the initial brainstorming for it, of what I wanted it to look like, and yeah. So But yeah, so I've done a fair amount of lightsaber designs, and it's really fun just being able to go in and sketch out something that looks cool and then turn it into a model that you can share with other people, and then eventually 3D print it such that you can share it with even more people. So we're going to finish that sketch, and now we're going to make a cylinder. So this, as the name of the component implied, is the top part of the lightsaber. And it is going to be it's easier just to make another cylinder. Yeah, so this goes around a core piece, which I don't think we're going to do directly after this, just because I want to get more. I'm probably going to do the entire outside first, and then I'm going to go back and do the internal components. And I'll sort of try and talk through the process. So for this part, what we've done is we've created a side profile, and then we've created the wall, essentially the wall that we're going to try and project this side profile into. And then once we do this intersect, we are left with a part which has our side profile and our wall thickness that we wanted. Something that we're probably going to come back through on all the parts and do is adding chamfers and fillets to make it look nice along the edges. But yeah, so I think this part is mostly done, and I'm going to apply an appearance to this, so that I'm going to be using white plastic for a lot of the outside. So I think I'm going to do translucent glossy, that I'll add that to the design. And I do have a section that's going to be wood later on, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to the model already. I think oak will be fine, but we're going to see how it looks, and if it doesn't look very good, then we are going to change it around. So that design is done for now, and we're going to come back and activate the main component, and then we're going to create another new component, And this one is going to be the base 1 component. So this is at the very bottom of the design and is a metal component. So we're going to go 15 out. The bottom part of it is a revolved piece. So I'm drawing the profile for that right now. And then there's going to be a metal section which runs up further, which we're drawing here. Dimensions 35. So that's going to be the revolved section, and then we're going to do the rest of this such that it can be mirrored to the other side, and that'll make our life easier because when we're designing the wood fitting that goes onto it, we will only have to design half of that wood fitting rather than having to make two sides. So for this, we need, let's see how we want to do it. 155 is the edge length there. I have a number that I haven't calculated. Okay. So 155 minus 50, I think. So that's one of the nice things that you can do is you can do math inside your thing, and then if you go back in and click on it, you can bring it up and edit it. So you should be able to see it from the sketch, which should be on screen, that this number is trying to get to the lower edge of a circle that we're going to have up here. Actually, I think I want to overshoot it, so I might actually just go with 152.5. Yeah, so we're gonna overshoot on the value that we need, and then we're just gonna bring it back down later. And this is only 2.5 millimeters thick, and then we're gonna bring this all the way back down to there. So that should be good for that piece. So we're going to finish sketch. First thing we're going to do is revolve. So another thing to clarify, I'm using the design shortcuts of the model toolbox, and by hitting S I can bring up that menu, and then that lets me type in whatever command I want to use. But I very rarely use this, except for maybe new component. Most of the time I don't touch this interface, and I just use the search functionality of the model toolbox in order to make everything that I need. So this one we're going to extrude 15, and it's currently set to join. We're okay with that. So now you'll notice that there's this little edge, and the way we're going to get rid of that is we are going to extrude this all the way up to that face. There are other ways to do it, but that's what I'm going to do this time. And now we're going to mirror features, and we're going to mirror this and this here. Okay. And you'll notice that if we go into the bodies, everything is still just one body. So now we can repeat the mirror again, and we're going to choose all of these features, and then we're going to choose this as the plane, and we're going to hit OK. And now we have this metal core section, and I think I'm going to come back in later and add a more circular thing right here, but that will be once we figure out the wood, which I think I might work on next. So yeah, we're going to go back, we're going to activate the parent component, we're going to close that, and then we are going to do a new component. And this is going to be base 2 wood. So yeah, naming your components, and especially if you have a lot of them, naming your sketches makes it a lot easier to figure out what is happening in your designs, because they do get really complicated really quickly. So for this one, we are going to start with the side profile. Let me make a line here that is 30, and I want it horizontal, and then I'm going to make a line here that is 100 52.5. And then finally I'm going to bring this around. And then I'm going to midpoint this entire thing onto the origin. And now at the top of this, I'm going to add a circle that is 12.5 in radius. And this is the profile that we really need. So we're gonna stop that sketch. And then we're gonna make the other sketch that we're going to use, which is something that goes out 2.5 and then up 152.5, yeah, 2.5. And then just like the other one, it's going to come back down. And a lot of this we could do with the rectangle tool, but I am sort of just using, or I'm used to using just lines, because I can. So now we're going to stop that sketch. And the last thing we're going to do is we are going to make a cylinder. So this cylinder starts here, and it has a base of 30, and then it's going to go up 152.5, just like everything else. And then it is going to have extrude. So you can do depth selection, where if you, or actually it doesn't, there's only one thing here, but if you have multiple things, so like in the space where there's multiple options, if you long left click, you're able to bring up the depth selection menu, and then you can select from the different options of things that you could use. So for this, I'm going to bring it 15 in that direction, and then I'm going to make this intersect. So now you can see it is just this side, and then I'm going to take the, I guess I could actually just extrude this section, but because I made the other one, I might as well use it. I'm going to take this, there, and then we're going to do symmetric, that way it cuts both directions, and we're going to go 15 in each one. And then we are going to, that should be good for now. Like I said earlier, we're going to be adding chamfers and fillets and all that type of stuff once we have more of the design filled in. And I think this design is also going to be getting screws somewhere in this section, that I think I will add that later as well. But that is good for now. So now I'm going to go back to this design, and I'm going to use a rigid group. So I'm going to set up a rigid group, and then I'm going to uncheck the include child components, and then I'm going to select the parent component. And what this means is that this model won't ever move compared to the parent for the design. So now I can start, actually I should color these. So this one is already steel, so it's good. But this design needs to be oak. We're probably going to change that. And I'm going to use a joint on this, even though they are already lined up and does not need it. I'm going to do it anyways. So that means those two are stuck exactly like that, and that's good. And then the top does not connect onto this whole setup yet, so we're going to leave that there. Now let's see what we want to do. I'm going to turn off that one and that one. So we have a middle section which we can start working on. Actually, new component, mid 1, and this guy is going to have a side profile that looks something like this. So as you noticed earlier, I was doing dimensioning at the same time that I was doing the, I'm too zoomed out. I was doing dimensioning at the same time that I was doing the actual modeling. Another option is to do it like that, or I was doing dimensioning at the same time that I was doing sketching. Another option for that is to do dimensioning and sketching separately. And the advantage that that gives is you don't waste time fixing stuff while you are trying to think about the design aspect. You can just sort of sketch out everything that you want, and then you can go back in and make it the correct size. So coincident here means that when I do that, and then I'm going to take the outside and coincident it as well, which will make it stick. And then finally this comes down and connects to that there. Now for dimensions, so this and this need to be coincident, and then this and that are going to be 2.5, and this side, we don't want it there, and then that and that are going to be 15, and then additionally these two are going to be 15, and that is also going to be 15. And then this side height needs to be significantly taller. It's going to be 50. Some of these dimensions I may play around with just to see what looks best, but this is sort of just what I sketched out to start with, so it's what we will go with. And then that is supposed to be 10. So now this is the side profile for our piece, and then once again we are going to be doing the cylinder inside a cylinder cutting thing. So that is 30, and then this is going to be extruded up to match. Okay. And then by right-clicking, I can bring up this menu, and then I'm just going to repeat the command again. And this is going to be once again 26. And it's 26 because we want the walls to be 2 millimeters thin. That way they remain 3D printable. And for this, I'm using Shift E, and then I'm selecting the profile. Shift E is the shortcut that I have for press pull, but when you select a profile like this, it is identical to doing extrude. Yeah, so that's a cool thing about the press pull command, is that it brings up the command that would be applicable for whatever it is that you're doing. So now we have this piece in place, and the base wood one is what we need to bring. So we're going to go back to the parent component, and actually before we do that, let's make this color. We're going to turn this on, and now we're going to make a joint between these two that is here. So as you can see, there circles here line up, and this one hasn't been hollowed out. We might go back and do that. We'll see how it looks. Getting a look at how the whole thing is going to go together. I'm actually going to go in and turn off sketches. I have my preferences set up so that sketches automatically stay on. The default is that they automatically turn off. That's just because a lot of the time when I'm designing, I use sketches for multiple things. So in my designs, it doesn't make sense for me to have them turn off. So now we're actually going to go back into this design, and we're going to edit some stuff. So because this is the yellow part, and we can actually do a cool thing. So component color cycling. So now the color here, and the color of the part matches. That's a cool thing. If you have a lot of stuff happening, you can more easily visualize your part, and that's color component cycling toggle. or component color cycling toggle. Yeah. Alright, so back in this design, so you can see we just dragged our little marker back through the timeline, and then I'm going to activate this so that Fusion knows I'm working in this file. I'm going to go onto here, and I'm going to go up the 152.5, and then I'm going to go over by 15. Now I'm going to select both of these lines, and I'm going to hit X, which is the shortcut for construction. So this means when I make, what is this? Oh, so this line is not vertical, so we're going to make that. So how I notice that there is that the lines are yellow, which means that they're not fully constrained, and you want your parts to be fully constrained, but that way they don't randomly break on you. So yeah, back to this design. And as we've said, it's 12.5 radius or 25 diameter, and then we're going to extrude this symmetric and 2.5. So now we're going to turn the sketches off on this one. And then we're going to activate the parent component, and we are going to jump through in the timeline. So now you can see it matches up nicely with our wood piece that we have happening here. Now let's see. So eventually we will probably cut both of these down because we're going to be designing this for 3D printing, and we're probably going to have a dowel rod, or we may have a collapsible lightsaber mechanism inside this. But yeah, so let's see what we want to work on next. Let's do the button. So we will make a new component, and this is going to be mid-2 button. And I haven't really thought that much about this part, other than the fact that it does have that it does have this curvature, that's right where it sits, so we're sort of constrained by the size of this space. And yeah, so it's weird that that part is not ghosty. Yeah, as you can tell, most of the time the parts turn into ghost parts when you have a different component activated. But yeah, so let's get into designing this one. So we have the 25mm. I'm just really zoomed out right now. We have the 25mm thing. We have that which needs to be 15 away. We're going to make both of these construction items because we don't really care that much about them. Actually, I'm going to redo this, that way it is out of the way. Okay, so for this button design, I'm going to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do 20 up in both directions, and we're going to revolve this part around, and this is actually going to be 13, and this will allow our 2 wall thickness when we have the outside parts. 2mm wall thickness. Okay, so for this design, I think I'm just going to sort of design a button over here, and then we're going to bring it into the place, and we are going to make it work. We got some stuff there, and then I'm going to make this here, and then we're going to give this some depth, and then we're going to give the whole thing, we kind of So the idea with the design that I just made is that half of this is going to be used to cut this part is going to be used to cut through the cylinder that this creates, while this part is going to be what we actually want. And then I'm going to secure this in place by putting it here for a coincident. And then I want to make sure that this and this line up. So cool here. Now, we want the button to be, we can go with 12. We'll see how this looks. We can obviously play with the numbers afterwards. The thickness of the button is going to be 2, and then I guess I'll make this also a 45-degree angle. I think I want this to be a bit more. It's going to be 15. And this is still less than an inch, so if it ends up looking really small, like the opening is the size of an inch. So we can bring it up maybe to 20 if it doesn't look right. I'm going to make this 1, and then I'm going to make this 2, and then I'm going to make the depth on this one, and that dimensions it. So we'll see how that looks. I'm probably going to add a light effect on the part produced by this. But yeah. And if it looks good, we'll leave it. If it doesn't, we will change it up. So now we're going to revolve, and we're going to use this axis. Okay. We're going to repeat revolve. Might need to change something. 13. Okay, yeah, that works. So revolve is already done. We want to do the revolve here. So as you can see, this is going to cut out the space for the button, and then we're going to repeat this revolve, and we're going to select this, and we're going to do new body. And as soon as we select this axis, it's going to actually switch us back from new body, so we have to make sure that we're actually on that. And that looks like a decent button, so we're going to go with that. And I'm thinking this part can stay metal, and I'll make that the white part for now, but we'll see how it looks in the full assembly. So now let's turn some stuff on and activate this. So these are the two that I'm really connecting it with, that I want it to work well with. So I'm going to make a So you notice this joint isn't oriented really the way that I want it to be, but we'll see. Yeah. So as you can see, it flipped it in a way I didn't like. And there isn't a good way for me to adjust that. Okay. So what we need to do for this is we need to come back into this part, and I'm going to make a sketch on this plane, which is just a circle actually, and it's going to be 30, and then we're going to finish sketch. So now what we can do with this is we can do the joint, and then we can go from this circle to this circle, and then it should line up perfectly. And then let's make sure that we're out here. So Fusion tries to be smart when it's making joints. So as you can see, the joint is colored with the same color as the parent component, and yeah, but it's always better to design stuff in individual components, that way it does not have any chance of breaking. So what we're going to do right now, just so we can get a better look at the design, is we're going to start adding some of those finishing features. And to do that, we're going to first mirror this component, and we're going to select that's starting to look decent. And I know where I want the top to go, so we will actually, we're going to turn off the base, and the base will, sure. So I know where this wants to go, and I now have something that I can connect it to, even though it's going to be offset. So now we want to rotate it 90 degrees, and then we want to bring it up 5. Eventually that is going to be filled in with stuff, but that is what it is right now. So we're going to turn these two back on, and now we're going to start chamfering some stuff. So with this chamfer, I'm going to select this, and one of the good things about chamfers is that a lot of the time, if you're doing equidistant, it works perfectly. Fortunately, we don't want to do equidistant, and therefore there is a good chance that it is going to break terribly. So we're going to turn this middle section off, that way we can get a better view of the part. Now, if everything goes well, we're going to bring this 2.5 in, and 0.5 in, 1 in. Yeah, so as you noticed, some of these look different, and they should. So that means we're going to have to do this in a few different steps. So we're going to turn the middle one off again. We're going to repeat the chamfer, and hopefully these two will be on board for doing 2 distance. And as you can see, these are not going the same way. So we're going to have to do those one at a time. How about this? Actually, we're going to use the mirror functionality. So I'm going to go back in time prior to making that mirror, and I'm going to do the fillets on the chamfers on the wood part when there's only one of them. So that's the nice part about having a timeline, is that you can go back and you can change stuff, and then you can have it update, and you can do a lot less work that way. So that is what it is supposed to look like, and we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to repeat the chamfer over here, and we're going to go in by 1, down by 2.5, and you can see it matches up nicely. Actually, we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that. Just so stuff stays a little bit more organized. And then we're going to chamfer this one as well. And that's going to be down 2.5 and in 1. So all of those are nice and line up. And then we're going to turn the mid back on, and now you can see its edge is exposed. This is going to be a lot easier to chamfer the edge on it. And now let's go in 1, and then over 2.5, and that looks correct. So we're going to hit OK. Alright. So, we're also going to add some chamfers down here. Let's go back to 4th mirror. We can turn the top off. So for this one, I'm going to add, I'm going to use that depth select so I can get the edge that I want. And I'm actually going to do a equal distance one on this, and I'm going to do it on both the front and the back end. For some reason I'm really out of, okay. And this is just going to be 1 in both directions. And then I'm going to come forward again to there, and I'm going to do another chamfer on the metal part. I'm going to have have to do this one more time because I was bad at planning. And then I'm gonna do the base of the bottom part as well. And that's gonna be 1 on all of those. Now we're gonna go back in the timeline because I'm bad at planning, as I just said. And we're gonna do it onto that edge, and we're gonna do 1, and that way everything matches up. And actually, I'm not gonna do that. I'm going to edit this. So I'm gonna edit and hopefully select the correct edge. That was not the correct edge. That is the correct edge. Okay. Now when we jump all the way forward, you can see both of the components have their chamfers where they should be. We have some nice detailing up here. Okay. So on to the upper section. So I'm actually going to use the measure tool to inspect the distance I need to go here. Okay, so that's going to be 30 millimeters up, and then we're going to start doing probably 25, and then we'll do a pattern. Okay. So for that, let's make a new component, and this is going to be mid-top because it's the part that connects the middle and the top. It's pretty intuitive there. And we're going to use isolate just because there's a lot of things that I don't feel like turning them all off individually. And let's see. Do I want to do it this way? Yeah, okay. So this part is going to go out 29 there, okay? And then on this side, I want to make it a little bit smaller, so I'm going to go with 24 divided by 2, is that? Actually, let's go with what would have been 26, okay. And yeah, this is what we need to fit inside the other parts. We're probably going to end up subtracting this part to make it fit. So this design is going to go down 25 millimeters and then over to match everything. And then when it comes up, it's going to go, quick math, 15 and another, so we have 5 before, we have 15 there, and we have another 5, so it's going to go another 25, and then I'm going to make it go 10 because I'm not sure how much more space I really have. So we'll do that, and that. Now we're going to make this a thing. So you should be able to see the sketch for this part and what is happening in that sketch. Is we have all of this, which is just revolved. New body, all good. And then this part, which is extruded, and I'm gonna do 2 in each direction, and we're gonna see how that looks. I'm gonna make this a join. So that's not bad looking. I'm going to mirror this feature. So the nice thing about mirroring features, just like we did earlier, is that instead of not mirroring, patterning, they are very similar commands, and therefore it's pretty easy to get switched up with which is which. So this feature, and we're going to do that around the z-axis, and I want 8 copies of this, and we'll make sure that it looks right. And this is actually going to be in black plastic, just to get a sort of shadowed look. and we're going to use the matte for it. Some matte black. Alright, that looks okay for now, and just like everything else, it probably will get more detail later. So now we're going to go back to this, and we're going to do unisolate. Now, to get this part into place, we're going to use options. Let's actually turn off the bases for now. So this bottom section should fit with the other one. That's how I got the measurement, so that should be what works. Ta-da! Does it? It looks like it does. Okay. So that looks decent as a connecting piece. I think I might make these a little bit thinner, and I might make more of them. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the sketch, and I'm going to make this 14, so 14.5, and then I'm also going to edit the feature here, and I think 12 might look better. So, yeah. And we can still obviously go back in and play around with this more. That looks like a good starting point. And we're going to have to cut this out of the other features, so we don't want to make it too thin. So like this minimum distance 0.85, that's just barely 3D printable. Yeah, so that looks decent. Now onto the top section. Let's see, do I have this sketch from the top that I can use as a reference point? So I'm going to inspect from here to here, and let me actually show some. So that's one of the cool things when you have show snap points on, is that like on the top of this cylinder, actually let me, this one's annoying because is that actually on the top of the cylinder? Okay, so this line is actually on top of the cylinder, which is a useful thing to have happened. So in that case, actually no, that's the line that I made it with. That makes so much more sense. I'm going to go from this point to this point. And now you see an XYZ delta option. This is super useful. So now I can see 35 millimeters brings me to the top of this. So I probably only want to go up 30 for the this top piece. But yeah, having whenever you've selected 2 points, you are given the option of the XYZ delta, and it's a great way to measure things. So once again, I'm going to unisolate. I'm not sure what I had isolated. And this is going to be top to emitter. Sure. That sounds like a thing that works. And then for this one, we are going to isolate it. Yeah. So down here. So all of this needs to fit inside the 26 millimeter space that we'd spec'd out for the previous piece. So I'm going to make this 30 tall, and I'm going to make this 13 wide. So this is sort of our working area. This is going to be entirely revolved, and I'm not doing anything for the core yet because that's going to probably be a dowel rod. But yeah, so I'm going to have a top section, and then I'm going to have a handful of these. Depending on how this ends up looking, I may make the other part this is going to rest on smaller and make this one bigger just so that these bumping sections work better. So all of these are collinear, and I want them to go in by just 1 millimeter, and then I want them all to be the same size, so we're going to constrain these as equal. And then we're going to dimension one of them, and that's going to be 3 millimeters. And then we're going to start dimensioning the spaces. Let's go with 2. And I'm also going to do 2 here. So all the gaps are the same right now. So I think what I want to do is I want to add some. So I hit X again to bring it into construction mode. So I'm going to add 2 things here. So these 2 are the actual. So we'll see how that looks. We might change this up a bit depending on how it looks in natural design. And then this up here is currently 6 point. Let's make this 5, and then make this 2.5. So that's going to be our side profile. And we're going to finish sketch. And then we are going to revolve this. And as you can see, construction lines don't interfere with profile selection at all, but if it was a valid line, it could be used as a revolving option. Okay, and I think this is also going to be matte black, or actually, it's probably going to be metal. Okay, so now we're going to unisolate stuff. Now notice that the things that we had turned off before are still turned off. It's just that the things that were visible become visible again. And then we're going to do a joint from the base of this onto the base of that. That brings our nice cord there. Maybe what we actually need to do is make this middle section metal as well. That might fix some of the inconsistency. Yeah, I like the look of that. So now let's turn on the wood parts and the base section. And then I think we need a little bit of chamfering and other whatnot up here. So let's do the chamfer on this edge. And we're going to do 2 distances. We're going to go in 1, and then let's go down. I think down 5 looks nice. And then on these 2 areas, I'm going to go with probably equal chamfers. We'll see how it looks. And let's do equal of 1. So that does run into some issues with this. I think I want this to be a little bit smaller. So we're gonna edit this sketch. You can double click on the middle mouse button in order to bring your sketch back, or bring your part back into view. So I'm going to make this 13.5, that it's just a little bit bigger instead of being noticeably more bumpy. Okay, I like the look of that. Yeah. Now, what do we want to do? Then we can turn that sketch. Or actually, that sketch is already off. Let's sketch somewhere else. I think it's this one. Where is it? What is this sketch from? This is top. Yep, the sketch was actually there. Okay. So here's a first look. Let's bring this over into the render space so that it looks less, and we're going to need a recenter. Okay, I sort of like the look of that, and we're going to do a quick in-canvas render. That was a little bit too quick. I think we want a bit more detail on it. We're going to put down the rendering gallery, that way we can get more of the saber. So this isn't amazing. Let me change with the materials a bit. So I'm not a huge fan of the oak that we went with. Let's try the cherry. All of them have that issue where it breaks right down the middle. I don't like that look. Let's see what the environment options are. So let's go with a cool light as opposed to, let's go back to these. So we're gonna replace the steel with, let's try a polished brass. We're gonna get a little error, or most of the time you'd get a small error. Yep, that because the steel is the default material. Oh, that's not supposed to happen. For some reason, yes, okay. For some reason, it decided to replace that entire wood section. So I think that brass isn't the way to go. We can try this old matte, or we can try just a different material. So I like this more than the steel, but it still isn't what I want. So let's try and find a lighter wood to go with this. Because I think if I'm just going to add a few different options. I think with a lighter wood, the bronze that we were working with will look decent. Maybe we can try one of these 3D options. So let's throw that on there, see what it looks like. I think that was so that doesn't look bad as a material. I still don't know. I feel like the metal under is missing something. I'm not quite sure what it is, but we're just going to try a bunch of different metal options and see which really make it look good. We're going to go with a patina'd copper, and then we're going to go with a polished platinum and a satin titanium. So we're just gonna play around with all of these and see what makes sense. So I think, yeah, it's too shiny. Try the beat last. So I'm going to delete that one and that one. That was not supposed to be on that. No, it did look pretty good. Okay, yeah, I like the look of the copper more. So now that we've done some sort of initial testing with that. We're going to turn render off, and then we're going to go over to the design. So that gives it a funky texture in the design space, but that's fun. Okay, so further detailing. We're going to go to the top is all the way back at the end of our design tree. So I'm going to roll the history marker to here. We're going to start editing this up. And it is completely, yep, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to make a rectangle in this plane, which goes from there. Nope, not a center rectangle. I want to use 2 point, which I have here. And it goes from there all the way up to there. And I'm going to dimension this so that it stays in place. This is 60. And we need to midpoint that. Okay, now you can see it changed color. It was blue, and then it became black because it's now fully constrained. Alright, now I'm going to make a little sort of mock-up thing over here. So what I'm doing with this line is that if you're using the line tool and you draw a line, or instead of like clicking and then clicking another point and then clicking another point, if you go back to your starting point and then you draw out just away from that, you will produce a line that is or an arc that is tangent to your original thing. And then I'm going to dimension that as being 10, and then I'm going to dimension this as let's see, what's a good number? 5, yeah. And then I'm also going to add a construction line here because I think I'm going to need that construction line when I am making this. So I made a copy. As you can see, everything is still constrained the same way. And I'm actually going to take this line on here so that I can reference it. And you'll notice I'm still in construction mode, so that line is a construction line. But I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make these two midpointed. So now you can see what is happening with it. And then I need make another copy of this design. And do want the two sides to be consistent, so I need to figure out what sort of looks good. I think that's the best option. Control V. And we're going to make a thing. How do you want it? So it's tangent to that one, and then I'm also going to make it midpoint to that one. And then dimensioning this. Maybe with 12 and see how that looks. Alright, we can stop sketch. So now we're going to extrude, and you can see it's flipping back and forth because it's not sure exactly what I want to select. But by using that depth selection, I can tell it which part I want to actually select. And then for this one, we're going to do symmetric, and we're going to go 15, and we're going to leave it to cut. So now you can see we have all of these edges, or these spaces, and then we're going to turn on the whole thing again, and we're going to look at that in the final design. Yeah, so that's what I was hoping for, that this nice copper underpiece would come through. And we're going to do one more of these at the top section here. So we're going to activate this again, and we're going to go back to here. Alright, and double clicking on the center mouse brings us back into place, and then we're going to make a new sketch, hitting L to make new sketches, which is the line tool. For this one, I'm not sure if I want a single notch or another triple set. I'm thinking a single notch is going to look better, just a single larger notch. So we're going to make that, I think it's the same size right now actually. So this is going to be 15, so that is wider. And then this is 10. Okay, yeah, so this is twice as large. And I'm going to coincident these two, so it will also be noticeably deeper. Yeah, let's see how that looks. And we have to turn sketches on, extrude through that. And I'm just going to make this 15 to be consistent. And then let's go check it out on the final design. So the reason you might have noticed that I did like a thing and then I moved it forward is because if I activated this again, so you can see these are all the features that affect this component. So if I go out to the end of the timeline and then I go back before this chamfer and then I turn everything on, notice that my thing isn't here, it's actually directly before this chamfer. So by telling it to go past this point and then come forward a little bit, we know that it's right where I left off editing back here. You'll also notice the timeline is nice and organized because I've been activating components and working on them individually and then going back and changing stuff there. Alright, so let's turn off that sketch, and this is what this looks like. And then I think I actually want to, let me see what it looks like with the fillets. I think that's good. Maybe, yeah. We're gonna add fillets instead of chamfers to all of these. So I could have done this prior to doing, so prior to bringing these back into place, I could have added these fillets, but my guess is that if I added fillets, then the chamfer would try to follow the fillet, and that can cause problems because it will not do what we want it to do. But there's also a small chance that adding them now is not going to cooperate. So we'll see. Now with all of these, I'm just doing control and clicking. Not that. And then I'm going to go with fill. And I think one should be okay. So yeah, that's sort of, I think it might be this that's breaking it. Yeah. So that's what I was afraid was going to happen, is that it breaks down a little bit because it has chamfers and fillets and curves going on. So in that case, we will try before, and we're going to fillet all of these. And that should be okay. And then let's do one. So now they all do fillet, and then we're going to go forward. Okay. That doesn't look bad. Yeah. This should be okay. Alright. Any other details? Yeah, so on this one, I'm going to add a blue LED onto the face of this, because I think that's what's going to look good. And I'm also going to do these inner walls because, yeah. And I think before I get done, I will want to add the screws into the side of this component. But we can do a render right now and sort of see what we're working with. So I think one thing is that I like the 3D wood, but I don't think I like the specific one that I chose. This might be a cool option, so I'll hit those. Try the maple. Yeah. So I have lots of options. I think I'm also not 100% set on the copper. That is already in there. That's the one I just dragged in. That's all the ones that I'm going to play with today. But yeah. Okay, so that has a lot more texture than the other. Well, not really texture, but it has a different look. Okay, I like that one the most. Now let's look at metals. I think a coating might be a good option, or we could look at one of the metallic paints, because sometimes those look nicer. Also look at powder coat. Okay. So let's try the titanium nitride. And metallic silver. That almost has too much white, but let's try the metallic dark gray on that. Let me make this piece. Keep. Okay. Blends in too much. I do like this a lot. I think I like having these pieces darker. But try this and I think I like that. Alright. So now we're going to go back to design, and now we need to make sure all of these parts... I think I'm going to skip the screws on this one. We'll see. I might add them in afterwards, but I think I'm skipping them for now. But we're gonna get everything ready to be 3D printed. So we're gonna isolate each part and make sure that it looks correct. Some of these we're actually gonna be doing intersecting stuff with. So like on this one, I'm actually going to just right now, I'm going to intersect it, and this is going to be a cut and keep tools. So this body, and then these two. Yes. And once we get to reviewing that part, we'll see why. Okay. So this one, isolate. It looks good. I think I'm gonna add fillet, or I'm gonna add chamfers to all of these edges just so they'll print that little bit nicer, and that's just gonna be one. Okay. And now we're going to isolate everything. And this top piece, which we've spent a long time already scrutinizing, we're going to isolate that, and it looks pretty good. Yeah, let's unisolate. Now this piece, which I don't want to have it be active. I'm going to isolate that. So as you can see right now, these are all just features like that, and I'm actually going to chamfer all of the edges on these. So for the selection, I'm going to use a selection filter, and all the edges, I'm going to select this entire area, and then I'm going to do 0.5, which is going to break it, of course. So the problem is that it's selecting the inside and the outside edges at the same time, which is unfortunate. So we're just going to come through and select a lot of edges. So when you're selecting stuff like this, by switching between control where you can select more, or holding down control where you can select more, and not, you can get a much better view of what it's going to look like. Also, if a certain section is not working, by switching back and forth, it will give you that error. That way you don't select everything and then have it just be like, yeah, no, that's not a thing that you're able to do. Almost there. Alright, so that looks like all of them, and then we can hit OK. Now all of these have those fillets on them, and I think that is good for that one. Now let's isolate everything. So the next one is this piece, which we're going to isolate. And that looks good. There's not really much going on, so it's all good to go. Now we're going to unisolate. And the core we can isolate. This one has bodies unlike all the other ones. So body 1 and body 2. Once we get done this pre-check, we're going to do some stuff to make it more 3D printable. So we'll deal with making those fit at that point. Now we have base wood. So with the wood ones, I think they're fine as is. Actually, the current issue is that those are connected. So I'm going to do a combine, and I'm going to, I'm going to cut this out of all of the other features down here. And I need to select that as well. did that correctly. Nope, I did not. Why did I do that correctly? We'll go back one. Combine. So this is the thing that I want to cut, and that is the thing that I want to cut with, including it looks like I might have to go back and fix this one as well. Okay. This is the thing being cut. No. This is what I want to cut. This is what I want to cut with. This is also what I want to cut with. Okay. So that should be all good. And then, yeah. So this still looks correct. Yep. Now let's go on to the base part. So we're gonna isolate this. And yep, it looks like it's supposed to, for now. These are sort of thin features, so I'm going to see 1mm. It can be done, it's not going to be super strong, but it's also going to be sandwiched by the wood on both sides, which should help with that strength. Speaking of the wood parts, we're going to isolate that. They have this top section cut out, they have a nice 3D wood pattern in them. Yeah. And then, yeah, so that is all of the parts of this saber, and now we're going to completely mess them up by running a cylinder down the middle of them. So we're going to make this half an inch, or 1 inch divided by 2, and then we're going to give it 0.4 space. So I am designing this to be a dowel rod that is put down the middle of it. And we're going to go 250, it sounds good. So now all of these parts are chopped up down to the very end. But yeah, so I think that is where I'm going to call it for this section, and then I'm going to record some tolerancing as well.